Good. We have all go. Okay. I've got Dave Mercer and Tam Campbell, and I'm doing an interview on European or English witchcraft and their ideas in comparison to the Irish. Okay, it's a question for both of you. Which pagan tradition do you follow?
I follow and I'm trained in Gardnerian witchcraft, Wicca, for some 20 odd years.
And I'm a Wiccan of both Alexandrian and Gardnerian origin.
Is it a god and goddess orientated religion or both?
Yes, it's very much both. Wicca is a religion of duality where we worship equally the goddess and the god.
The balance of gods and goddess, most essential. We're one of the few religions, I suppose, around at the moment which in fact acknowledges the feminine aspect of divinity.
And what is the basis of your pagan belief? Historical basis?
Historical, how did we get to this point?
Yes.
Wicca is different to many other religions in that we don't actually say we have faith in what we believe. We just know, it just is, and we experience it all the time. You're not a weekend witch.
Something
You live it.
The background of Wicca, the growth of Wicca, I mean, I see no reason personally to have any sort of like pedigree to say, oh, this goes back 10,000 years or something. We should really look at the modern development of Wicca in the last few years and how it came from a group of people who were pioneers and rather brave in their time, doing something which that challenged the establishment religions of the period. And from them came not only the Wicca, but an awful impetus for the whole of paganism.
Do you believe in magic?
Very much. Wicca is a balance. The magical system that is part of Wicca is inseparable from the religious aspects, so that you can't have one without the other. So magic is just a reality like any other force, like electricity or magnetism.
There is actually an interesting theory that the name Wicca, a lot of people have gone into different reasons why. It comes in fact from a word related to the word Yule, meaning to change. And in this we can change our lives, we can change the world around us towards a greater harmony. Magic is a part of that. Magic is in fact the mechanism for change.
Have you used magic, and if so, on what?
That's a big one. We use a lot of healing magic to try and help people. Always, of course, remembering that this is not a substitute for allopathic medicines. We ask you to go to doctors, etc. Also to help people emotionally, physically, and to change people's life circumstances. I've used magic to bless fields, to make the crops grow.
Right. Its application is almost universal. You can do almost anything you can imagine with it. Not in terms of doing the spectacular Disney type effects, but the important things to modern people, which are their relationships with people around them, whether that's family or whether that's romantic, their financial and physical situation, and their employment situation, which is incredibly important to modern Western people. And those are all the things that you tend to get asked to help with. but it is very much a positive, helping and doing actively good rather than making any negative changes at all.
We are very averse, for instance, to doing something which will interfere with the free will, the choice of another person. I mean, we do not violate personal integrity, physically or magically. And that's a very strict rule.
Is there any negative effects to using magic?
Well, if you follow the basis we just described, where you're doing positive magic, so you're doing something for good. So, for instance, you're improving someone's life in some way, whether it's their employment or whether it's their circumstances in a relationship, without imposing their or your will on anyone else, then there will be a payback, if you like. There is a price, but that payback is of the same nature as the force that went out. So it's like a reaction to the action of the magic. And if you do good, you get good come back.
Good will have good, bad will have
If
bad.
you do bad, then the same is true, then bad will come back. So providing you follow the Wiccan ethic, do what you will, and it harm none, you're fine. You'll get only good come back to you.
So it's actually a very practical ethic. It's not a case of we're all well lighters. It's a case of if I throw a brick in the air and don't walk out from under it, it's going to hit me in the head. If I do bad, evil, say I want to curse somebody, I expect a comeback. It's commonsensical. You don't do something that's going to hurt yourself.
Have you ever actually cursed anyone?
I must admit, it's sometimes tempting. There are people around that kind of invite bad feeling, but no, I haven't.
Direct action is probably the best way to deal with somebody who is caused harm. I mean, if a person has caused that much harm, then surely there are things like the police, etc. It's only when you never get to them that you would do such a thing.
In
to
very
prevent others from being harmed.
in very severe circumstances, you can do something to limit their actions. So
Yeah.
you don't actually hurt them. In some ways, you can actually help them, because someone who is doing something which is very destructive, very bad in terms of the feelings it generates in the people around them, can actually be having quite a hard time themselves. So if you restrict their actions in such a way that they can't harm other people without harming them, you can actually be helping them.
I also would say that, I mean, it would be important to remember that you must do the greatest good. People can get obsessed. Evil magic, cursing and the like, can actually create a kickback where a person becomes obsessed by the actions that they're doing, and therefore harm themselves and others. Sometimes good to restrain them.
Yeah.
If that's a curse, I don't know.
It's not intended that way.
No.
How do you worship when you practice your religion?
The form of Wicca that I come from has a fairly well-defined set of rituals. They do vary through the year because it's connected to nature. So you would do something very different at Samhain or Halloween to something you do at Beltane maybe. But the form is extremely consistent in some ways. You have the concept of a circle, which is cast. You have the concept of quarters, which is part of the tradition I come from. That doesn't apply to all. Some may worship in a very different way, which is quite valid.
Personally, this ritual structure is a good thing to have, because within that structure you can grow and develop. We worship passing of the seasons, the times of the year, as manifestations of the god and goddess in nature.
Who do you worship with?
Who? Wicca is organised into groups called covens. Covens are small, autonomous groups. So I'm part of a coven, which is a small, autonomous group. So in terms of worship, those are the people
We worship, yeah.
you'll worship with. We do also have an outer court, which is a slightly larger group of people who are looking to become members of the inner group. So at times we run what we term open rituals, when we worship together with people who are learning to see whether that is their path. There's no commitment for someone in outer court.
It is a development which, when I came into the craft, wasn't there. What you did then was the inner core would come and worked. Anybody who was coming into it would come along, and when it came to the meeting time, they would go. For a year, you simply went along, had a cup of tea, and went again. There is also at times many other forms of meetings. I mean, 2 or 3 covens could get together to celebrate a festival. But the coven, the family, is the main worshipping unit.
Yeah.
Where do you practice?
A variety of places. Basically, it's not in any way similar to a Christian church. Wherever you set up your ritual is the place you worship, and that can be
a sacred place.
That can be anywhere. So, ideally outside, because it's associated with nature. Ideally outside, but with the Northern European climate, that's not always possible. So, we have a place which we use, which we dedicate to that, but we're lucky.
We also have a site that is we use it. Yeah. I like moving around and going places. I enjoy going out to the wilderness sites, but we tend to also have the site that we use a lot, build up power on that site. And it's outdoors in a hill.
How often do you practice?
In terms of active rituals, we tend to have an inner court once every 2 weeks and an outer court once every 2 weeks. Plus we do full moons, and we tend to remove the day such that it will fit with any festival that's coming up.
We, of course, this group I'm building at the moment is slightly newer because it's a new group that's building up. So we're slightly less so. We tend to do once a month and festivals at the moment. Of course, as people become more used to it, the commitment will increase.
Do you have any special clothing or costumes?
You could say that.
That again varies with the festival. It varies depending on what you're doing. For instance, if you take something like one of the big famous sites such as Avebury, then more often than not it'll be regular street clothes.
People are wandering by.
If you don't use regular street clothes, what happens is you end up with a huge crowd of Japanese and American tourists with cameras. Now, if that's what you're into and that's what you want, then you go with all your outrageous regalia, and you'll end up on video across the world. But when usually we're not looking for that. We're looking for a quiet celebration, so we'd wear street clothes in that. If we're private, then it varies depending on what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is that just as you wouldn't go to a job interview or an exam wearing shabby old clothes, so when you're going to face the gods, you go something special and sacred when it's appropriate, when it's going to make a stir. You don't just wear your normal clothes. But
it's very much putting yourself in the state of mind that this is a ritual and this is special,
Yeah.
rather than I'm just going down to Sainsbury's for shopping. So putting on different clothes.
What about these sky-clad rituals we hear about, so being naked like that?
That's another form of
Putting on a special
putting on a
clothes.
special clothes. It's getting yourself into a different state of mind, which is very different to everyday life, certainly in this country.
Yeah.
There are limiting factors in terms of the North European weather. I mean,
You
see
tend to do it
outside
summer.
now,
Doing it in the snow is not a good idea.
Yule is an unusual one for anyone to attempt that one.
Well, I've done it. But if the gods, or in Christian terms, God made you in the image of the sacred, then what is wrong with worshipping the gods in the image of the sacred, which is your own body? I mean, covering it up is like covering up the image of Godhead. This is sacred. This body is sacred. It's not sexual. It's not perverted. It's a sacred thing. We are simply saying we are divine ourselves, and we worship our goddess and God in the most divine way we can.
And it's just our cultural background that has brought this strange idea of everyone has to be clothed all the time. If you go back to primitive societies, they'd find it most weird. No, yes, they'd wear heavy cloaks when it was cold, but they wouldn't when it wasn't. You go to the Amazon or any of the warmer climates, you'll find clothes are unusual, except that they've been westernized.
Yeah, I mean the Celts would go into battle. Their finest warriors with sacred unity. For what reason?
In your god and goddess-based religion, do you have a devil like Christianity?
Simple answer to that one is no. The devil is a Christian invention to explain the existence of bad and evil in our world. If you believe in an all-powerful God, how can there be bad things happening? How can there be murder, rape? How can there be corruption? They have to have an answer to this, and their answer is the devil. Now in Wicca, we don't believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing God. There's a variety of gods and goddesses. There can be a natural disaster, for instance an earthquake. That is just nature. That's not good, it's not bad, it just is. And people have freedom of action. If someone commits a terrible crime, that is because that is that person's choice. There is no god or goddess egging them on to do it. It's their personal choice. And it's on their conscience. We have no need for a devil.
There is no vicarious atonement. There is no concept of original sin. There is no concept of evil walking the world to tempt us, because our gods are sort of testing us. They're not setting up exam boards in this life. We're the ones who test ourselves. And we're the ones who take the responsibility for our own actions.
What are the names of the gods and goddesses that you worship?
I'm not telling you the inner court means. No way. There are many.
I go on.
The simplest answer to that is there are names which we use in the inner rituals which we keep private. Now that is in common with the Celtic belief that you wouldn't let anyone else know your tribe's god or goddess names, otherwise they would have power over you. That is a very ancient belief, and that's one that is carried on inside Wicca. Externally, we have many gods and goddesses which we may worship at different times. They're all different aspects of the divine, and we all see them as equally appropriate.
I'm not asking you to name these people now, but do you know any pagans in Cork? Do they actually exist in Cork?
I believe so, yes. Yes, I have met people who I would classify as pagan.
And are there actual witches in Cork?
I would say yes, although again, obviously you wouldn't ever name anyone.
No. But there are one or two that I've met.
Male or female?
Now this is an interesting question. The common perception of witches is that they're female. If you go back to the witch trials in this country, well, not so much in Ireland, but certainly in the UK, the most common victims were female. Actually, in fact, in Ireland as well, with Alice Kyler and her maid. But if you go to Scandinavia, then you'll find the situation is reversed. The normal victims were men. That was purely a cultural thing. It was the way that the church decided to impose the repression. The truth of the matter is, witches can be men or women.
There was a famous Scottish witch called Boswell, who was, in fact, wanted to, according to the stories, to kill the king with the Berwick witches, and he was a man.
Do you believe in black magic?
Magic is, as I said before, like electricity. You can do good with electricity, or you can do bad.
Yeah.
Magic is the same. It's the intent on what you do.
It's like a
The
fire.
force is the same.
Yeah, you can use a fire to heat the food, or you can use a fire to burn your cottage down.
In witchcraft you've got a term horned god. Now, was that a symbol of the devil or a mist?
If you take Christianity back roughly 2,000 years as we are now, and you take the image of the horned god is an image on cave walls thousands of years before Christ was born. It's an ancient symbol of divinity. In Egypt, they had horn gods and horn goddesses, and the horns were a symbol of divinity,
This is also
stretching back through the ages.
It's also true. You go to Crete, for instance, you find in sacred areas on the ancient Cretan temples they will have horns. Catilhuic, the temple where they have the goddess with the below her a series of horns, the male birth. And even in China you have horned gods going back. This is, the horns are a symbol of power, they're also a symbol of the moon. There's 100 symbols from that sacred one. It's as sacred as the cross.
And they're also symbols of nature as well.
Yeah.
So as we are a nature religion, the horned animal, for instance the stag, is seen as a sacred symbol.
Do you follow any particular philosophy?
If you call Wicca a philosophy, then yes.
Yeah.
I don't see any need to go outside of that, because it's a very simple but all-encompassing philosophy, a way of living.
Personally, I have a certain attraction towards post-structuralism. But having said that, this is a religion of poetry, it is a religion of art, it is a religion of the heart, not the mind. So therefore, you do not have angels dancing on the head of a pin. In this, there is a metaphysics, but it is a very practical one. It means go no further, because it is direct poetic experience. That is the nearest thing I have to philosophy.
And do you have specific guidelines that you must follow within that philosophy?
The only guidelines is basically don't harm other people.
No.
Now that is a very simple philosophy, but it can also be quite complicated, because you would harm someone by your inaction,
Yeah.
which means
Or your ignorance.
that you would have to actually, in certain circumstances, take an active action.
Make
Not
an
talking about magically in practical terms. You would never leave someone injured by the side of the road purely because you would harm them by that.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally couldn't do that.
Do you believe in heaven or an afterlife?
Now that's a very good question. Wiccan philosophy tends to talk about reincarnation. So you're born, you die, and then sometime later you're reborn. The bit in the middle, which the Native Americans would call the summer lands or happy hunting grounds, is kind of a rest period. Quite where you go and what happens, I
There's
have no idea.
multitudes of speculation, but the whole point is that it isn't really relevant to know, because it is a different space, a different circle, a different world. And possibly our concept of it would always be less than it really is.
Now, do you do meditation, and if you do, what benefits do you get from it?
Yes, we do meditation. A lot in the form of path working, which is a kind of guided meditation. Particularly for people who are new to meditation, it's a very useful form because it's a supporting, helpful form. It guides you.
It's interactive rather than...
Yes, exactly. So it's simple for beginners. Once you're used to it, then you can use it on your own. Some people obviously come into it where they've been involved in Eastern religion, where they need no help from us in learning meditation. Benefits: you get the benefit of relaxation,
concentration,
a quieter state of mind, a better state of mind, better able to concentrate on whatever task you set yourself.
the ability to focus the mind, which will help you in all things, and focus the will.
Which is vital for magic.
And it's also practical, because if you have a certain sort of situation you want to get out of, being able to concentrate, calm your mind down and focus it allows you to see the ways out of that situation in real life much better than sitting around worrying about it.
Do you use any equipment or weapons in your rites rituals?
Right, now the word weapon could be misconstrued here. Yes, we do use equipment or paraphernalia, or in theatrical terms, props. These are again to focus the mind and put you into that state of awareness that you are out of the normal world, that you can achieve things that you wouldn't normally expect to be able to achieve. There are a variety of things, everything from the robes you might wear to the various items you might have on your altar, which range from simple practical things like something to keep the water in. It's not in itself a magical item, but
Important.
it's important, otherwise the water would go all over the altar. A dish to put incense in, you would need, because otherwise you'd burn a hole in the cloth. But then you have items which their purpose is purely magical. They have no practical purpose on this plane.
Yeah.
So you would have possibly a wand or a knife, which you must never ever cut anything with. Its purpose is purely spiritual. A directing, focusing purpose.
If you want to, say, cut something like an apple in a circle, you've got another knife, the one you used to sort of like eat with. I find also that, sometimes little bits of extra practical paraphernalia, like having your own cup or glass, so when you're having a bit of a relaxation after a meeting, you're all friends together, in the countryside, you're not using plastic cups, you're using something. I've got one made out of a piece of oak, sort of like just a bit of log with a hole drilled in it and a handle put on it, which is quite good. It was given me by a friend of mine some time ago.
Yeah, wooden implements are actually very common because we try and use natural things.
How did you get interested in magic and paganism?
I got interested at university. I was, in fact, a student of Buddhism, Zen Buddhism at the time, and I met a hereditary witch who had, in fact, she was a very rich person. Her father had an estate which had 3 villages on it. In one of the villages there were a lot of very old men who had asked her, their priestess had died, and they needed a priestess. The tradition was the squire's daughter. She started me off. It was years before I found and started studying in a group. So there was a period of moving from just seeing it as interest towards knowing that this is a vocation I had. And then practically, as soon as I got that, lo and behold, there was a meeting of a series of witches down the road. It's astounding how I'd never met any of these people before, you know, except for this college. And they just decided to meet down in the pub a bus ride away. So obviously the goddess was setting up, and the gods were setting up, because it was such a coincidence. And slowly, one thing you notice is they don't make it easy. They don't sort of turn around and say, oh, here you are, you're going to be initiated tomorrow. They make you work. I at one point had to walk in a snowstorm. They invited me, because in that time, of course, it was a bit different from now. They were a bit sort of stricter about open religions, open rituals they didn't have. And they kept me till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then told me, right, we'll see you next time. And I found myself walking 12 miles in the snow. They were supposed to see if I would come back. I did. So it was an adventure that got me in. And once I got in, it took a long time before I was considered dedicated enough that I'd been seen to actually gain initiation. And then the training started.
Which never stops.
No.
For me, I got interested first. I read a book when I was at school, which was not a directly Wiccan book. It was more a historical book on witchcraft and various forms of magic. And that just gave me that spark of interest. I then read a book on spiritualism, and that gave me a different insight into the possibilities, what could exist, and what could be done. Then I went into the world of work, and I couldn't read it very much for a long time. I actually got into Wicca through tarot. I was a tarot reader, and some of the people I knew turned out to be very, very interested in quite an intense way in Wicca, and so I went along and met my first witch, which was one of the Crowlers actually. It was the first one I ever met. So, and from there on, I found it's like a feeling of coming home, of where you belong.
Yeah.
I've never had any doubts whatsoever. This is the path for me.
If you found anyone interested in paganism, what would you say to them?
I think that's a very difficult question because it's different for every person. This is not a fad, it's not a fashion. It's something for life. And if you don't feel it's quite right for you, then by all means go out and look at other things. If you do, it's a long, hard road. It can be not hard in the physical sense, but you do have to have a lot of dedication. It's not an easy path. There are a lot easier.